For the second straight year, the last regular season home game is against the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, that game was for the division. This year, for the Washington Redskins, it's about pride. Welcome to Gametime Live, presented by Verizon. I'm Lou Holder. In the bowels of FedExField, it is raining hard. So we brought it in here so we could have some semblance of a cast. And we're bringing in, as we always do, the man with all the inactives, all the information. We're doing it right off the top. Chris Big Sexy Russell from ESPN 980. Chris, what we have for inactives for this last regular season game of the year. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you, Lou, and all the Redskins fans out there. Maybe Santa will come a little bit early in the midst of a dismal year, and you'll get an early Christmas present. But the Redskins will have to do it as without Robert Griffin III, as we all knew, and as we expected. Bakari Rambo inactive again, so that's again not a good sign. Chase Minifield inactive again, as well. Brandon Jenkins, he's been off and on inactive. Once again, Josh Laribas and newly signed center J.D. Walton. Now, the Redskins only had to inactivate 6 players because they have an open roster spot on the 53-man, so they're not required to deactivate 7, only 6, so that's your 6. And that also means Darrell Young is active after kind of tugging, if you will, at his hamstring in Atlanta, which cost him the second half last week.
Okay, so I didn't get the chance to talk to you last week, but your thoughts on the whole Kirk Cousins performance, the way it ended, and now with Robert Griffin III and all the even more media stuff that has come out this week about his dad being upset and whatnot. It never ends, but your thoughts on Kirk Cousins and Robert Griffin and how they handled themselves over the last season?
Well, first of all, both have handled themselves very well, mature, professionally, on camera and all of that. Clearly, it's not an easy situation for Robert Griffin III, and nobody would blame him. There's been a lot of stories, as you mentioned, a lot of attacks, a lot of, some people call them smear campaigns, whatever. Who knows exactly who is responsible for some of this stuff, but clearly it is not a healthy, vibrant situation for Robert Griffin III, the franchise quarterback. Now, I will say this. Kirk Cousins did a lot of things that, Robert Griffin III, quite honestly, had not done. Not that he's not capable of doing, but had not done. And that's pick apart a bad or really bad defense.
Hold on. Okay. We don't get to do this a lot, but why don't you come over here for a second? I want to bring some of these cheerleaders in. Yeah, it's very festive.
They're very festive. I can't say anything that's not going to be more appealing.
I mean, because looking at me and you versus looking at them.
I've got major issues.
Yeah.
You've got some issues.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Trying to be nice.
Ladies, we know what it's been like as broadcasters, but how's it been like on the field cheering for a team that is not doing so well this year? But, your jobs are to make sure that the fans stay geared up.
Well, we are lucky to have the best fans in the NFL, so there's been some diehard fans, winning or losing, we stay behind our team, and we're really confident in these games. We just, keep a smile on where they're keeping morale up, and like she says, we're happy to have some little fans. Rain, snow, or shine, they're always there. Little hailstorm.
Okay. Chris Russell wants to ask you a question.
I got to ask you guys a question. Now, I get here pretty early, and I saw you guys during the middle of a downpour out there, and the water is literally just coming up from your feet. First of all, how do you stay on your feet? Second, I hope new boots, right? Right? Am I wrong?
Can we get a shot of the boots? Can we get a shot of the boots?
This is a pregame adjustment, right? Yes?
This is an audible at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I think, we're fortunate we have a lot of different uniforms, so we have a different outfit completely we wear for pregame practice, and you can see our hair didn't look like this when we came in, but we just try to do what we can. So we just have to stay grounded while we're dancing and do the best we can to get low and still have fun.
Ladies, I have to say, that's the most excited Chris Russell has ever been on the show, just asking about your wardrobe. Thank you guys so much. Stay dry and have a good game.
Happy holidays.
Chris.
Yes.
You don't get excited when I ask you
I gotta ask them important questions.
But when I ask you questions,
you ask me who's inactive. I'm asking the cheerleaders about their boots. What's more important? What is more relevant to the overall
That's not the
cause?
only thing I've been asking you throughout the year. Not inactive. I've asked you other things, but I've never seen you this excited. Let us move on. We're both parents, right?
We are.
If our child was benched in the last couple games of the season, right, we would be upset as parents. So when people are saying that Robert Griffin's dad may be upset, I would be too. So I think Our business, though, sometimes make a bigger deal out of something that is just commonplace throughout sports.
Yeah, and look, again, not only is his dad not happy about it, but number 10 is not happy. And Mike Shanahan has said a lot of things, okay? But one of the things that resonates with me is I don't want somebody that's not upset about not playing.
Sure.
I want somebody to now, you have to always balance it, especially when it comes to injuries and coming back too quick. And maybe that's some of the reason why we're in this position. Overall, big picture, it is a very difficult balance. But here's the one thing, that I sense just being around the park. Sure, there was another story on Tuesday when we weren't at the park that lingered into Wednesday, but then Wednesday you had London Fletcher. And because it's Cowboys week, and because it's the last home game, and because it is not only London's last home game, but it could be the last home game for a guy like Santana Moss, who's been here for a number of years. And it could be for a lot of this coaching staff. Now, who knows? I think there's been more of a focus, along with the fact that it's a big game for the Cowboys and you have a chance to kind of put a dagger in their season, on football than certainly there was Atlanta week or even, leading up to the Kansas City game the last time we were here at FedExField.
We always have room for three here, so let's bring in Brian Tinsman from Redskins.com. When he's here, don't go anywhere.
He's got to take center stage.
When he's here, we always ask who's on the front of the game they cover, and you have Brian Orakpo, who's actually been playing very, very well. I would have said you'd have London Fletcher on it, but he told me, in full disclosure, he told me they did that early in the year, so no one knew that London Fletcher was going to retire because he plays, seems like, forever. But Brian Orakpo is not a bad deal.
No, and Brian actually works out pretty well. He had a slow start to the season. This is a season that he told the fans in April that he was going to be the defensive player of the year. Obviously, probably not going to hit that mark. He would have to have about 6, 7, 8 sacks in these last couple games to really put himself in that conversation. But these guys really come on strong. You can definitely tell that the confidence is there again, and that's really the difference. We talked about Robert a lot this year, but Brian Orakpo coming back from a repeat pectoral injury like that, we've seen the mental side effects of it's not going to run over here.
Post-game live. And because we're post-game live, live things happen. That's the ice.
There we go.
And we're back.
So, and that's the thing, is that you're seeing the confidence. The physical ability was always there, but now you're seeing that he is confident in that shoulder, in that pectoral region. And he's really been lights out, 7 sacks in the last 6 games. I think that he's ready to get his first sack against the Cowboys today.
I think Brian Orakpo played fantastic, but I think this goes far back to what people want to focus on, which is, now that the team's eliminated, Brian Orakpo's on a contract, which, look, not suggesting that that's not an important thing. This is his last home game under contract, and we don't know the future. Brian Orakpo, to me, Tinsman mentioned coming back from the second pectoral. He has played really well, I think, since the Oakland game, where he was not only very good rushing the quarterback against a shaky offensive line, but I thought he made a couple of big-time plays behind the line of scrimmage run defense, which is, I think, his greatest improvement this year.
All right, you're watching Gametime Live, presented by Verizon. Now, guys, let's start with some post-mortems here. When you look back at this Washington Redskins season, this is the last home game for the Washington Redskins. Let's break it down to offense, defense, and special teams. Your biggest concern of things that happened in the offense, and what do you think is going to be different next year for the offense?
I mean, when you talk about the offense, I really think that it starts with the quarterback position. I mean, that's pretty obvious. You need to get Robert Griffin III. He is your guy. Obviously, going into the offseason, he's your number one. He's going to take all the snaps. He's going to get all the reps. He's going to get all the time in the film room, applicable time in the film room. And, that's important. This is a critical offseason for him. But I think, probably the biggest personnel thing that they need to address in the offseason is looking to upgrade the offensive line. That's really where it starts. It's right up front, and we saw it all season long, that when they're running the football consistently, this is an offense that clicks. And when they have to go to a pass-first, pass-only type of offense is when the whole thing breaks down. So you really need to look to upgrade that.
Yeah, I would agree with that regardless of who the head coach is. They are, because that is where they have struggled, especially on the road in the second half of the game. And it's been also here at home too, and in the first half, but I mean, it's been largely pass primary second half road games where defenses can tee all down. You mentioned offensive line. You also need, quite honestly, an upgraded wide receiver. I mentioned Santana Moss, very likely playing his last home game. Josh Morgan, very likely playing his last home game. Leonard Hankerson coming off an ACL, LCL. And especially with Jordan Reed being ruled out for the year, and of course some of the injury concerns that you have there, and for good reason with the concussions, you need at least one more playmaker. And I would say and argue 2 more playmakers. Look, the bottom line is this team's not a very good football team, and they are in store for a dramatic talent upgrade. And you hope with the extra cap room, and maybe they could swing a deal in the draft or something to get somebody.
Right. Let's go back to you with defense. Defense, obviously, Jim Haslett's system. It hasn't been as bad, ranking-wise when you look at it in the NFL, but the plays that they've given up, they need some more stoppers there. Obviously, they've had some concerns in the secondary and in the front seven. What do you expect to see on the defense for next year, and what's been the biggest disappointment for you?
See, actually, I would argue that the rankings look worse than the actual play. Okay. Now, I am a Jim Haslett. Some call me an apologist. I'm going to say a supporter, a defender, because I think it is largely a talent issue, and it starts in the secondary. Because, yes, while the pass rush is inconsistent, and that makes a secondary much better, it's not easy to fix that too. When you're asking them to also in a 3-4 scheme cover, stop the run, be in their spots, be in their gaps, play with sound discipline, tackle. So it really, again, starts in a passing league and a chunk yardage league with being able to take away the big stuff over the top. And that's what this secondary, even though D'Angelo Hall has had a big year, has not been able to consistently do enough. Look, again, they'll have cap money. So they've got really virtually that entire secondary as free agents outside of David Emerson. Some of these guys are not going to be back. They need a dramatic upgrade in talent there, and they need to re-sign Perry Riley. And, I would argue that at the very minimum, you franchise tag Brian Orakpo. I'm not sure if you go long-term at the money he's going to want, but at the very minimum, even though it's a hefty investment for 1 year, I would try and tie up Brian Orakpo as a solidifying force.
Right, how about you for special teams? Let's go special teams.
I mean, special teams, I think that when you look at the injuries that they have suffered this year, obviously losing a guy like Lorenzo Alexander is not going to make your unit any better. When you talk about some of the guys that they've missed, Keenan Robinson, Brian Peel, guys like that were supposed to be major players in coverage this year, I think that's really where your problems start. But what they need to, assuming that you get those guys back healthy this offseason, assuming you can identify 1 or 2 more key playmakers in coverage, I really think that you have to identify a returner. They really thought that this was going to be a league that got away from returners this year, in the last couple of years with the change in rules. But if you look at the best teams in the NFL, almost all of the teams that are in playoff contention right now are the teams that have a legitimate returner. And we're not talking about a guy who can run it back to the house every play. Certainly that helps. But you need a guy that gets the ball out to the 30-yard line. Consistently starting inside the 20 is killing this team. It's leading some of the longest drives in the NFL. And they really can't allow that to happen. They have to find the guy this offseason, whether that's somebody in-house, in the draft, a free agent, doesn't matter. Got to find somebody.
Gametime Live presented by Verizon. A couple more issues before we wrap up the show. Fletcher talked about it at the beginning of the show. I want to address it more because we got to give it its due. 7 years with the Washington Redskins. This is 111th game with the Washington Redskins. This is a Hall of Fame career. His body of work before he even got here, winning a Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams. That being aside, I just think that when you talk about durability and you talk about presence and you talk about, when Greg Williams brought him in here, we were just like, wow, that's one of the first people that he went and got. Greg Williams went and got was London Fletcher, and he stood the test of time. Has not missed a game in his career.
Well, I think he'll go down. Maybe I'm missing one as the best free agent sign of the Daniel Snyder.
Oh, absolutely. It's not even close.
I don't think that's even a question. We know about the leadership. We know about the consecutive game streak. We know about the tackles. One of the things that I think gets a little bit lost in London's repertoire, even though he struggled a little bit in coverage the last couple of years, he's 5'10", asking him to cover 6'4", 6'5" tight ends down the seam. That's natural. One of the things that I think gets lost is his ability to get after the quarterback at times on different inside twists and blitzes and stunts and all that stuff. And also he has made plays in the key statistical areas that we all look at. Forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, sacks, as I mentioned, interceptions. You look at the numbers, they're at least in the range of Brian Urlacher, a little bit below Ray Lewis. And I don't think he's a surefire, no doubt about it, first ballot Hall of Famer. I think it'll take him a couple of years to get in, but I do think he will eventually be in Canton, and he will be, the next Redskin linebacker after Chris Hamburger and of course Sam Huff, and, to get into the Hall of Fame.
It's really remarkable with London how underappreciated he was for his entire career. 4 straight Pro Bowls to close out his career, but that was his first sniff of Hawaii. I mean, that's really remarkable that for all that he did in St. Louis, for all that he did in Buffalo, that he was not a guy that was, making regular trips to Hawaii. He happened to play in an era, as you mentioned, Brian Urlacher and Ray Lewis. That's not going to help you. Those guys got the highlight reel hits. They got, the Super Bowl opportunities. They ran deep into the playoffs. Unfortunately, London didn't have that. He didn't get the big stage that those guys got. But he made the most of it. And he, you mentioned the stats, that he is just short of Ray Lewis in a number of statistical categories. But the tackles, and you can write up tackles however you want. You can say that it's because it's a team where he's going to have more opportunities. It's a team where on weak defenses they're going to play more offensive snaps. It doesn't matter. He's the guy out there making the plays, and he did it for such a long time. I mean, that's really an incredible career, and I would hope that Hall of Fame voters would not hold that against him.
Finally, on Gametime Live presented by Verizon, this is Dallas Week. I saw something on Facebook that was very, very funny. It had a picture of Tony Romo, and it had him with some baked goods, and it says fresh turnovers. And it's amazing that this guy in December will turn the ball over, and I think that's one of the keys to the game is when Tony Romo throws the ball, it's going to be thrown to another jersey at least 1 or 2 times throughout the day. I think it's imperative on the Washington Redskins defensive players to hold on to the ball because turnovers are coming.
Well, it's normally imperative for any quarterback, but especially this one, who obviously has a lot of skill that people forget about. He can move around the clock, no doubt. And the division clinching win last year, 3 turnovers, 2 early, so I mean, and then the big one late. Yeah. Now listen, it's very rainy. The field is going to be, chopped up. I expect. No matter, even if it was sunny and, 75, I was expecting coming into this game, both teams are going to want to run the football. And DeMarco Murray's been very good down the stretch. They again got away from him in the second half, which is a trend. So they have to be focused on running the football from a Cowboy perspective to not only help them, but to help Tony Romo. So if Tony Romo only throws 25, 30 times, you get your hands on 1 or 2 of those, you got to make sure you clinch.
Absolutely.
There's no way that the Cowboys are going to stick with the run. They've done it all year where they love to get away from DeMarco Murray, and that plays right into the Redskins' hands. The key here is pass rush. When you send 5 guys at Tony Romo, his stats drop dramatically. That's when the turnovers happen. I know that Jim Haslett is not a guy that wants to send any more than his base 4 at the quarterback. But really, it starts with getting after this guy. It's not about the sacks. Honestly, he helps the defense more when he gets outside of the pocket and flings it in a hurry. So, it is the turnovers today. It is getting after him. It is making him very uncomfortable. And hopefully he has a typical December game.
These guys are always good all year long. Thank you so much, guys, all year long. Ryan Tensman of Redskins.com. Chris Big Sexy Russell. He hates when we call him that, so that's why I call him that more and more. Big Sexy Russell from ESPN 980. The Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. It means a lot for the Dallas Cowboys. Probably even means more for the Washington Redskins to make sure Dallas is staying at home with them this year. So get ready for the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. You've been watching Gametime Live, presented by Verizon.